Welcome to today's podcast, which is all about food and relationships. Now, we all know food's importance. It provides us with energy, helps our body to function, grow and repair itself, keeps us warm, and even influences our mood and mental health. But what influence does food have on our relationships and how we behave towards each other? That's what I'm going to be discussing with my guest this morning, writer and cultural behaviourist Marga O'Donnell. Marga, good morning.
Good morning, Henry.
As I said in my introduction there, food is an important part of our everyday lives. But it's so much more than just an energy source that fuels our bodies, isn't it? In fact, in a recent article, you described food as a cultural object. What exactly did you mean by that?
Well, what we eat is very much a reflection of the society we live in. In fact, I believe that food and the culture around eating can be just as important to cultural identity as, say, a country's music or art. Our diet and how and when we eat says a lot about the history, geography, and climate of our country.
Okay, I can see how geography and climate might influence what we eat. What's the connection between these factors and how and when we eat? Could you expand on that for us a little?
Well, for example, in southern Europe, people often eat later in the day compared to the north. In Norway, for instance, dinner can be as early as 4 p.m., whereas in Italy, the average dinner time is around 9 p.m. Reasons for this are largely to do with climate and the hours of sunlight in certain countries, with generally hotter, longer days in southern Europe, meaning people have later meal times. Spain, of course, is well known for its late dinner time. This may also partly be due to the fact that Spain sits in the Central European time zone, when in fact, geographically, it is situated in Greenwich Mean Time, the same time zone as the UK and Portugal. This means that, strictly speaking, Spain is 1 hour ahead of its actual time zone.
I see. So these factors can influence when people eat. So how can food and meal times affect our relationships? I suppose it's the social aspect of eating together, isn't it?
Yes. If you think about it, eating food together is central to many of our human interactions. Indeed, the word companion comes from the Latin word for bread and literally means someone you share bread with. We go out and meet our friends in cafes or restaurants, and we celebrate special occasions with a meal. Food brings us together and gives us a foundation around which to build our interactions with friends and family. A lot of research in recent years has focused on the connection between eating together and successful relationships. And interestingly, some evidence suggests that families who don't regularly eat together are more likely to communicate less effectively than those who do.
That is interesting. Now, I wanted to focus in on the significance of the act of eating the same food together. In your article, you touch on the subject of communal eating and sharing food from the same dishes, and how this helps to form relationships. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes. In many cultures, for example in countries like India and China, it's very common to share food from a communal serving dish. People see it as a way of being close and showing friendship. And this became the subject of a research project at Booth School of Business at the University of Chicago.
A business school?
Yes, that's right. Their research centered on the effects of sharing food on business relationships. They did some experiments to see how successful people were at negotiating and reaching agreement. They had 2 different groups of participants. One group was sharing the same food from the same dishes while they talked, and the other ordered their own separate dishes.
And what did they find out?
The people who shared food were more likely to work better together. But more interestingly still, they took 30% less time to reach an agreement than the group with separate dishes.
Fascinating. So it seems that sharing food can help to improve relationships and bring people together. Okay, now something else I wanted to ask you.